I've been getting a lot of questions from high schoolers about how do I major in food science or what is it like to be a food scientist, which I absolutely love. It makes me so happy. But I've been thinking, well, if one person had this question, probably a lot of other people out there have the same question. So I've collected up all the questions I've received via email from high schoolers and plan to give you my answers here. All right, let's start with question number 1. What do you wish you knew sooner about food science and about getting a degree in it? So I think I've talked about this several times in my channel. I did not know about food science in high school. I learned about it once I was already at university. It was my first year at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. But if I did know I wanted to do a degree in food science in high school, here is what I would recommend. In general, take any science class that you have access to. So I started taking like chemistry, biology, physics, but often in the US, or for me at least, my school had advanced placement courses. So something like AP chemistry, AP biology. Those are huge because if you do well enough in those courses, it counts as taking those courses at university. So it counts as college credits and you sort of get ahead of the game, compared to other students. So if there's any science courses, particularly any advanced science courses at your high school, take those. I also would recommend taking statistics. I've taken at least one statistics course in my undergrad, another one during graduate school. You could take calculus. I didn't take calculus in high school, but I then had to take it at university. So I would say just try to look at, maybe you could go to like UW-Madison's website, look at the classes a food scientist major would take. Can you take any of those ahead of time at your high school? Now, say your high school doesn't have a lot of options when it comes to science classes. There are some online food science classes. I haven't taken them myself, but I will put a link to a couple of online, they're free if you audit them, free courses, and you can sort of see, like, is this the type of material I would be interested in? Like, do I enjoy food science? So you can look for that in the description. What is something good to have already learned or done before going to college for food science? I think this is a very good question, and I have a couple points of advice. One, like I just mentioned, take any science class you have access to, even if that's an online free class. 2, look if there's any food companies in your city or in your town. Search, try to Google food companies near me. And if you find some, I would look who works there. Maybe you could find a product developer, someone to reach out to and say, hey, I'm thinking about becoming a food scientist. Could I come shadow you for a day or an afternoon? Could I come ask you some questions about what you like about your job? Maybe you could ask, do they have any internship opportunities or even just, hourly worker opportunities? Because then you can get real hands-on experience at a food company, which compared to the other students, you are going to look golden. That's going to look really, really good. And you can kind of get more of an idea if this is something you would like to do by already having experience at a food company. And in the past, I've experienced if you email someone asking for help or a specific favor saying, hey, I'm a high schooler, I'm interested in your job, could you tell me more about it? I mean, people usually respond positively. They are happy to show you what they do and to help you explore your options. Now, say there's not a food company near you, then I would just try to find a laboratory of any scientific background. I don't care if it's a microbiology lab, if it's a chemistry lab, but reach out to that laboratory and ask if you could get a part-time job, because practicing your lab skills will be a huge benefit. No matter what type of lab that's in, that will also look very good and get you ahead of some of the other students. Let's move on to the third question. Are the college classes hard? Now, I just want to say, first things first, just because something is hard doesn't mean it's not worth doing. I think you learn a lot more. Every experience for me that has been hard, I've learned a lot more and I've grown a lot more. Like, yeah, it's not easy 100% of the time, but things are really boring if it's easy 100% of the time. But back to the question, are the classes hard? From my perspective, thinking back to my bachelor's degree, really any degree in STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, I would say the classes are hard, or I just spent a lot more time in class than some of my friends who are not in a science degree, because I had to go not only to lectures, I had laboratories or practicals that maybe are 3 or 4 hours long. I just had so many more hours of class, but somehow my friends who aren't in a science major had the same amount of credits as me, or they're even taking more credits, like on paper, where I know I spent way more time in class, in lectures, in laboratories. That's not to say I don't think, you should do a food science degree. I obviously did it, but I will say it's hard. Science classes are hard. They can be competitive, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. I would say in general, the university I was at, the hardest classes I was in were the science classes, like specifically the second semester of organic chemistry was known as like a weeding out class, like weed out the weaker students. It was purposely very, very, very challenging. So OChem was very difficult. Physics just for me is more difficult. I don't know. I think some people just get physics and I don't get physics. Also, biochemistry. I liked biochemistry, but I know I sometimes would study with my friends, like 3 of my closest friends that were also doing a food science degree. Biochemistry was a lot of information, very fast, in a very difficult class. How is food science different than other science majors like chemistry and microbiology? So I have a couple points I want to make here. This is a good question, which I did not understand until I met with a food science professor during my undergrad. So first things first, food science is different, I would say, than a majoring in chemistry, biology, microbiology, physics, because food science actually incorporates all these scientific disciplines. So if you like chemistry, well, food science includes chemistry, but it also includes a lot of other scientific disciplines. And this is one thing that really attracted me to food science, because I knew I wanted to do something sciencey, but I didn't know how to pick, like, should I major in chemistry? Should I major in biology? I didn't know which one I really liked more, I guess. And so when I learned about food science and a professor basically told me, well, food science is like all the scientific disciplines just applied to food, just applied to like a specific system, that was very attractive to me. Now let me give you a specific example between chemistry versus food science. So chemistry, I've taken a lot of chemistry, and there's parts of chemistry, general chemistry, that don't really excite me. For example, in chemistry, you learn about molecules, you learn about carbon dioxide, oxygen gas, nitrogen gas, so on. And in food science, you also learn about molecules, but they're different molecules, typically bigger molecules. We would learn about proteins, fats, pigments in foods. And to me, having more of, like, it was just more tangible. Like, I know what food is, and now I get why I'm learning about proteins. What is a protein? What do proteins do when they're heated? What do they do when they're exposed to oxygen? To me, just the examples in food science, I could directly see why learning the information was important. Whereas in chemistry, often we would talk about like a metal surface and how the molecules are arranged. And I just didn't understand, like, why do I care how a metal surface, a surface of iron molecules, is arranged? It just didn't excite me in the same way. Learning similar concepts, but with the example of food, I found that to be much more exciting. The next question I often get from high schoolers are, what are the pros and cons of pursuing a food science degree? So the pros, I could go on and on about the pros. I love what I do. I'm very thankful for all my food science degrees. It's helped me get to where I am now. But the pros in general, I would say, is once I was in my food science classes at university, it was maybe 30 or 40 of us in that class. Your classes are much smaller in size, and I knew all the instructors, all the professors. Like, we knew them by name, they knew us by name, right? If you walked into class late, they knew exactly who you were and, and knew you were walking in late. Like, it's a very small community. I thought it was really nice because whenever I needed help, like you could just go to their office. It's kind of like an open door policy. So small class sizes, you get to know the professors. I had 2 paid summer internships during my bachelor's degree where I worked in the food industry before I even had my bachelor's degree awarded to me. So you can get experience and kind of get a feel for what you like to do and what you don't like to do, or maybe what area of food science you would be interested in. And like I said, the pros of doing a bachelor's degree in food science, I could probably go on and on. I did just make a short video about it, so instead of repeating that, I'll just put the link in the description and you can check it out. It's only like 2 minutes long, really just listing what I liked about doing my bachelor's in food science. Now the cons, this is a bit harder for me. When I've been emailing students back, if they ask me like, what are the cons of doing a degree in food science? It's hard because my experience at UW-Madison, like some of my best friends are from my time at UW-Madison, people I still keep in contact with. I still am in contact with a lot of my professors there, and I love my current job and I love what I do. So it's, I kind of have a biased opinion about the cons. I would say that the only cons I can think of is, one, if you don't like science. Don't force yourself into a scientific field, even into food science, if it's not something you're going to enjoy. And also in the US, unfortunately, if you get a 4-year bachelor's degree in something you don't really want to spend a significant part of your life doing, you could just find yourself in a lot of debt, and you may have to go back and find a different degree, or it wasn't a good use of time for you, a good use of money. So really the cons of food science, I guess, is really consider, is this what you could see yourself doing for the rest of your life? Is this something you enjoy, the science of food? That's really all I could think about when it comes to the cons. I like to cook. Would I like food science? So I get this question a lot. Another version I see a lot is, I love to bake. Should I major in food science? And the answer is yes and no. It really depends, I would say. So if you're someone who just likes like the art of baking or cooking, and you don't really want to understand why something happens, like why does a souffle rise in the oven but then collapse when you take it out of the oven? If you're not always wondering why something is happening, maybe you are just more into like the actual part of baking and cooking and mixing ingredients and making something. But I would say you would like food science if you're cracking an egg and you answer like, why when I cook the egg does it form a gel and get this different texture? If those type of questions go through your head when you're baking or cooking, then you would really like food science, because you're interested in the scientific reason behind certain things behind why certain things happen to our food. One of my good friends from grad school, she actually started in culinary school. I think she was there for a semester, and then she realized she was basically too much of a nerd. Like, she wanted to know the science behind everything they were doing in culinary school, and then she switched over to food science. Can you get a job in food science with just a bachelor's degree in food science? The answer here is absolutely yes, which I think is what makes food science a very unique major, because I've seen a lot of people, if they get a bachelor's degree in, say, like general chemistry or in biology, some very, very broad science that doesn't directly lead to a job. And a lot of those people, if they have a BS in biology, they then go get a master's degree to become a more specific expert in something else. Like, just the biology BS didn't lead them anywhere. Whereas a bachelor's degree in food science Most of my classmates immediately went into industry. They got jobs in product development and quality assurance and manufacturing. They could go to startups. They went to big food companies, small food companies. Like, with a bachelor's in food science, there's so many different opportunities depending what you're interested in. What you're passionate about can help guide you what you end up doing with your food science degree. Is it hard finding a job? This is a very smart question to ask anyone. If you major in food science or not, always ask someone, the professor or someone in the department, what the job placement rate is. How many students are actually finding jobs? So when I first transferred into food science, one of the big draws was that when I met with one of the professors to learn what food science was, is basically everyone at that time had a job lined up by graduation day. And I know that's not normal. There's a lot of other majors where people are looking for jobs months after they already have their degree. So I thought that was a really good thing. I don't know, of course, what that percentage is now, and that was at my university in the US. So of course, around the world, this could be different, how easy it is to get a job, especially how much it pays or something like that. But from my experience and when I taught at UW-Madison, where I went, a lot of students find jobs their last year of their bachelor's degree. Some of them actually will go back to where they internship during the summer. They'll sign up for a full-time job once they graduate. But I think it's job placement in food science. People are always looking for food scientists because we always have to eat. You say even during COVID, when people were being laid off, like most industries were laying off people, you know who was hiring? It was the food sector, because everyone was home and couldn't go anywhere, but they still needed to eat. So job prospects, especially job prospects, if you get a bachelor's degree, you don't need any more education than that unless you want to. The job placement is very high, and a lot of students I've experienced, they find a job, they haven't even been awarded their degree yet. They're still, in college. Is the pay good? That's a very good question, very important question. I actually just looked this up maybe last week, and for someone who has a bachelor's degree in food science and has 0 to 1 years of work experience, it said the total compensation in the United States was about an average of $62,000 a year. Now, this of course depends, even in the US, it depends, what state you live in, but also it's going to vary hugely country by country. But in the US, at least I know the average starting right now is $62,000 a year. Is it worth getting your bachelor's in food science? So, I think so. Obviously, I have my bachelor's and PhD in food science, but let me tell you why I think this is a really special and unique bachelor's degree. A BS in food science is one of probably very few, I would say, science degrees at a bachelor's level that leads to a good job. Most people in my class, after we got our bachelor's degrees, they went right into industry. They went and got their first job. Where I hear people a lot who, if you get a degree in biology, for example, a more general science degree, let's just say biology, you have a BS in biology. Well, what do those people end up doing? It's almost too general of a science degree that they have to go on to get a master's degree in something else. They don't get a great job right out of their bachelor's degree. Where food science, most of my classmates only got a bachelor's degree in food science, went and got a good paying job, usually lined up before they even graduated from getting their BS, and they then started their whole career. And once you have your BS in food science, so many different job opportunities are open to you. It really depends what you are passionate about. You could go to like a very large food company with brand names everyone knows, like you could go to General Mills or to PepsiCo. But if that's not your style, I have friends that went to startups. They moved to California or Colorado or someplace where there's more food science startups. You could go into quality. You could go into safety and food law. Like, There's so many options with a degree in food science. It's not just one option. Well, that's all the questions I plan to cover in this video, but if there's something I didn't talk about or you're a high schooler and have another question, feel free to leave it below in the comments and maybe there'll be a part 2.